seeing thumbnails of Moana 2, like Moana 2 sucks, Moana 2 is kind of dumb, Moana 2 is a terrible sequel. I decided to go in and watch this movie myself without any expectations. And while there are some issues that cannot be ignored that I want to dive into, I have to say that this is the best sequel that Disney has ever made. When I watched Frozen 2, it honestly kind of left me feeling hanging, like it left me hanging there. And I feel like it wasn't as good compared to the first movie. Now, to be clear, before I watched Moana 2, I did not go and watch Moana, but Moana is kind of like an okay character from Disney to me. Like I'm not particularly fond of her, but I don't dislike her either. So when I went to watch Moana 2, I didn't have any expectations. I just really wanted to see if it's really as bad or empty as people say. And I have to say, I cried two times during the movie because I love the references that they put into the movie. They didn't stray too far from the first movie, and we can really see the villagers still coming together and supporting her. Sure, you can say that Moana is kind of like the chosen one trope, right? Like everyone supports her. And in fact, even though there were new sidekicks in the new movie, they still feel kind of empty, like kind of weird compared to Moana. And it is a little sudden that they decided to bring in three new characters when we don't know their backstory whatsoever. Whereas for Moana and Maui, they both had an entire movie to dedicate to us knowing them. And as always, Maui is an amazing character. Whenever he is on screen, the story just gets better. And it's the same in the second movie. Now, I just have to say that the second movie definitely braved a lot of the risk, a lot more compared to the first movie. I didn't rewatch the first movie as mentioned, but I felt like Moana 2 was better in the sense that they were willing to explore more about death, more about failures. We actually see Moana needing people to be by her side because spoilers, if Moana didn't have people helping her when she was alone, I genuinely don't think that she would have survived. Now I get it. The old man and the guy that loved that artist guy probably didn't add much value to the crew initially, but as I watched on and gave the secondary characters a chance, I did see the importance without giving too many spoilers, even if it's a bad movie. I would say that I love the fact that they brought in Moana's sister. When in Moana, the first movie, I believe that Moana's sister is just a baby, so we didn't really know much about her. And I actually forgotten that. I actually forgot that Moana has a little sister. And I just really love that in the second movie, they really fleshed out the sisterly bond. Like, I really love the fact that when before she went for her journey, the little sister gave her a souvenir as a reminder that she would come back. And then later in near the ending, that same motive actually came back. Like they didn't just give us that one subject and then it disappears along the story. I would say though, I kind of wish they gave us more of the Bat Lady because honestly, I love her character design and I absolutely love her song. I think that she's fascinating. But I also find her relationship between Maui kind of jarring. Like she just appeared out of nowhere, captured Maui out of nowhere, and then suddenly she's helping Moana, and then like her crew managed to find her. And yeah, I would say that there are some pacing issues, such as this moment, like she randomly meets the coconut people that decided to help her, even though they were kind of like enemies at first, which was kind of hilarious but weird at the same time. All in all, I would say that Moana 2 has amazing songs and animations. Definitely the songs in the second season doesn't hit as good as the hit as much as the first movie. I am sure everyone loves You're Welcome, and we love the rapping and so on. And I think that Can I Get a Chi Who definitely doesn't have the same vibe as You're Welcome. But Maui still managed to do what he do, like in the first movie, he's kind of mischievous, kind of just playing around with Moana. But then we see him getting serious in the second season. And as mentioned, I really like that they were willing to explore death, even though there were plot armors. Now I get it. Disney is known for their happy ever after stories without any real risks, but in Moana 2, we actually see Moana being worried about the civilians that follow her dying. She's worried about not being able to complete this journey and meet everyone's expectations, right? Because Moana is basically the wayfinder, just like her ancestor. And so everyone is hoping that she will be able to connect her island with other people. And while it does feel a bit like your average My Little Pony friendship is magic equestrian girl kind of movie, I still thoroughly enjoyed it. Firstly, the animations and the colors is very vibrant, it's very beautiful. And one of my favorite scenes has to be Moana holding that seashell and blowing it. I know it's kind of like a repeated animation in the series, but I can really see why they keep bringing it back again and again. In the first movie, they had Moana and her father being on top of the mountain and him stacking up the stones, and she left the conch over there. And then in the second season, she's back to the exact same place, playing that conch while the camera zooms out. And I think that it's so good. Now, some of the issues that people say is that the first song of Moana didn't give any meaning to the film, and I highly disagree. I think that the first song that Moana has sang actually did give us the exposition that we needed. It's a very rather happy song, unlike the first song in Moana where she talks about how she's staring into the water, and she wants to find the way to the water. And it's just really about her and the villagers getting along. But I really like that they brought her back from the sea to her village using a song. It was so nice. Like the song isn't as catchy as those from the first movie, but I still really enjoyed it because it's so happy, it's so exciting. And as I listened to the song, it made me excited for what was going to come. And since Moana has always been a rather lively, happy show, I wasn't expecting something as grim as other Disney films, like from the darker series like Hunchback and so on. I felt that the opening song in Moana 2 did what it did, which was bring us to the island, and then from there we actually see how her father talks about the ancestors. What I really like about Moana 2 is that they place the focus on the ancestors a lot. They didn't jump out of it. And there were a lot of references back to the first movie, like how Moana was adopting herself and then her grandma appears dancing along. That was a really nice reference to the first movie. And I genuinely like that it seems like a continuation. Now, a lot of the problems with sequels is that they are either too different from the first movie or it just really falls short. For instance, like in Frozen 2, like Elsa and Anna kind of meets new people, make enemy with them, and then it was a happy ever after compared to the first movie where we actually see Elsa's conflict and so on. And I think that sequels really just suffer in general because when your first season is so good, fans tend to have higher expectations, or some people might not even want a Moana 2 because it might ruin the experience that the fans had in the first movie. It's like, for example, how shows like Akatsuki no Yona doesn't have a second season, like how Hyoka, Charlotte, they are shows with just that anime with just 12 episodes and end there. We don't ever see or hear of them again. And I think it's for a good reason, because whenever the second season comes, there are some issues. One, for instance, the songs, it might not hit the same as the first one. Like Into the Unknown definitely doesn't hit as much as Let It Go or Do You Want to Build a Snowman or First Time in Forever. And I think that Moana 2 suffered the same thing, right? You're Welcome is such a good song that when you hear Can I Get a Chihu, it does feel like a drop in quality. And definitely the songs that Moana sang later on seemed like it was just singing for the sake of singing. Whereas in the first movie, Moana was singing because she's not allowed to go into the ocean, but she sings about how it's calling out to her, and the animations of her jumping into the ocean and like rowing the boat is just so good. So when Moana 2 doesn't have that same kind of exploration guide kind of feel, like the initial excitement, naturally fans will feel that it falls short. Do I think that Moana 2 could have expounded on some of their pacing better? Definitely. I really wish that there were more dialogues between her and the side characters on why they want to embark on the journey with her, because Moana has an entire village of people and yet she only chooses these three. In the first movie, we didn't really meet these three people. We didn't meet the girl who builds the boat. We didn't really meet the artist, and the old guy was probably just part of the cameo of the songs and not a fleshed out character. So when Moana suddenly goes to them and say like, "Hey, do you want to join my journey?" It just feels sudden. It would be better if we had them talking about whether or not they want, and maybe they show their worries like they've never been part of this before, but Moana chose them to be part of it. The artist character did say that he was always listening to the legends and now he's a part of it. And I just love that part because a lot of these kind of like chosen one tropes, they don't really show how the characters feel when they are just merely NPCs, right? Moana literally chose NPCs to be part of her crew, even though they didn't have outstanding achievements. So I really like that the artist brought back later on. And initially, even though the old man was kind of useless and he's just grumpy all the way, not adding substance into the story, I really like that he eventually faced his fears of not being able to swim to, potentially save a life. I don't want to give too many spoilers, so you'll be able to experience the change in their character writing for yourself. But I just have to say, Moana 2 did manage to develop the side characters, which was a huge win for me because a lot of times, even in shows like Sailor Moon, we have very good side characters that are just shunned aside. It's the same issue I have in K-pop Demon Hunters, where the side characters are well done, have amazing character designs, but then they are only there because the main character needs them. Right? In Sailor Moon, Makoto Onisan, or like the other girl, Sailor Moon's friend, I suddenly forgot her name, they are very good side characters, but then the moment the main character gets all the fame and get what they want, they're just kind of forgotten and never mentioned again. So what I really like in Moana 2 is not only the fact that they managed to make these useless NPCs useful, they managed to give them development. Like initially that boat making girl, she was kind of annoying. She was like mixing everything up, and even Moana was frustrated with them. But what I really like is that Moana displayed her leadership. She managed to make a crew of people with drastically different personalities to work together. Initially they all wanted to go their own way, and as leaders or part of a group project, we all know how frustrating it is when you mention A and then people do B and then another person do C and then you want them to work together and everyone starts arguing. What I really like is that Moana managed to use a song to talk about them working together. And even though it was very fast paced, like they immediately agreed to work with her and they learned to work with her, I really like that they made it, instead of Moana crashing out on them and then like scolding them and then everyone just sits down sagging, because Moana is not the kind of not the kind of lady that would just shout at people when they don't go their way. So I thought it was such a nice touch. And additionally, Maui being in the team just enhances the flavor of the group because Maui is there. He meets all these people who are huge fans of him. They've heard of him, they love him, and I just love that they meet their connections matter. Like these side characters, they were brought in for a reason. Even though I find the part that Moana meets the coconut people kind of jarring and they suddenly decided to work with her for no reason, I still really like that they brought the character in. The coconut became very important to helping Moana getting her dream. And in Disney, I feel that a lot of the side characters don't really matter to the main character because they can do everything by themselves. And initially, when I was watching Moana 2, I was like, honestly, I kind of wish that Moana voyaged alone instead of bringing sidekicks along with her, since we have so many stories of people, like, we have so many Disney movies where the main character has sidekicks and then they are just there. But Moana 2 helped me to realize the importance of teamwork. Initially, them just going along with her, she's the leader, and then they are just doing their own things. To them actually helping Moana and being there to find her, I felt that that was a really good and interesting detail that they added. They could have just made the NPCs useless, and not do anything, but the fact was that they mattered. In the first movie, the NPCs are mostly just there to cheer and wish Moana all the best, to restoring Tefiti's heart, telling tales, but they don't really contribute to the story. Whereas in Moana 2, as so-called users as the NPC characters are, they added value. They made us realize that the villagers can also be part of the legends. And what I also love the most in the Moana 2 movie is that they brought in a lot of tribal references. We see them singing in this one language. I'm not sure what language it is that they were singing, but I felt like that was such a good reference to the tribal clan that they were meeting. Sure, there were a bit of a plot armor, where the stakes are really high, they are drowning, and then suddenly everything is all right because of power of friendship, right? But I felt that it was necessary because honestly, this is a huge spoiler, so please skip ahead if you don't want to hear it. But I really felt that they did a good job by making Moana face death. No, they weren't afraid to make Moana face death so that there will be the high stakes. And honestly, when I was watching that scene, I was like, Moana, please don't die. I do not want you to die. Because the thing is, Moana died sacrificing herself, which I felt was so heroic and brave of her. I genuinely didn't want Moana to die because she was this heroic figure for a good reason. She was brave unlike any other. While people are just enjoying their lives on the island, Moana was the one who took the initiative to go beyond. So she was more than just a chosen one leader. She genuinely showed us why she deserved to be the chosen one. And so when someone like her, such a brave leader, a funny lady, endearing person dies, I felt kind of sad, and especially because of little sister. As someone with siblings, seeing Moana have such huge connections with her sister and loving her sister, it genuinely made my heart So it touched my heart so much, and I wanted nothing more than her family to be reunited together. In a lot of anime and shows, there are a lot of parents and children that are just kind of far apart, abandoned, and they don't seem to have the warmth of a family. Like how in Frozen, Elsa and Anna doesn't have parents, and Elsa and Anna didn't get along well at first. So it was honestly a breath of fresh air to see a Disney movie dedicate so much to the sibling bond. As mentioned, I genuinely love the connection between Moana actually, um, like Moana receiving the souvenir from her little sister, and then that motive coming back, right? Because Moana didn't hide the fact that she lost her souvenir, and they had a short cameo at the end of the movie, which was such a nice touch, such a nice ending. And when the Moana 2 credits came out, it was such an amazing movie. Like, I would give it a clap if I was watching it in the theaters. From the music to the story to the characterization, I think that it has done really well. The only issues that I have is with the bad lady who kind of disappeared into oblivion. I kind of wish that she was fleshed out a lot more, because she only appeared for like not even 15 minutes, and then Maui and Moana's crew managed to solve everything. They managed to save her. There's no real stakes. Like when Moana was trapped, I thought that they would tell her that she's trapped, and Moana was like, "Oh shit, I'm trapped by that bad lady, that liar." But none of that happened. So I was kind of disappointed, because I love the bad lady. I love that the fact that the bats in the show had such a cute appearance, and I love the song as well, the one where she sang to Moana. And I also love that Maui has a rival that doesn't like him. But sadly, these were characterizations that could have been fleshed out, but not really fleshed out. So I've already spoken a lot about Moana 2 and how it's a very good sequel, and I genuinely think that it is. Do I think that it's a 10 out of 10 film? No, I don't really think it's a 10 out of 10 film, 10 out of 10 film. But is it as horrible as what people mentioned? Definitely not. As mentioned, my biggest issue with the story was the coconut people in the story, which I felt could have a better introduction than them just braving the storm, and then they see this thing like an island, and then it turns out that it was coconut people, right? Because Moana found this porcelain that had the people on it, which was so interesting. So when the coconut people were like, oh, they're part of this island, and then they also had something destroyed and they need to be reconnected, it was kind of weird. I feel like it would be better if the coconut people were replaced with one of the tribal people. But I guess the reason why they decided to bring in the coconut people is also because of the funny blob fish that's crying, and his mucus turns out to be an antidote to their poison, which I felt was kind of funny. And I also felt a bit weirded out by the fact that Maui escaped his trap so easily, and the bad lady didn't go like, "How did you manage to escape?" Kind of like how Queen Chrysalis faces Cadence in My Little Pony. Yeah, I get it. Sometimes plot armor just reduce the stakes in the show, but let's be real, this is Disney, and I don't really want Moana 2 to be such a dark film, considering the fact that we did get very dark moments towards the end of the show, and I totally get why they decided to pull a plot armor. It was very deserved, and I'm just so glad that they had a happy ending. Do I hope that they will get a Moana 3? Yes, I do. Do I think that it will be as good as Moana or Moana 2? No, I don't think so, because if Moana 3 were to come about, it's probably about the tribal people coming together, facing the storm, kind of like how in How to Train Your Dragon, people and the dragons don't really get along with each other, and then they learn how to get along with each other, and then it's another happy ever after. So I like to think that Moana 3 will be something like this. So I'm very satisfied with Moana 2. I wish that I watched Moana before I watched Moana 2. Maybe I would see the difference, but for what it is, I definitely recommend checking Moana 2 out. Don't let the criticisms of the internet stop you from enjoying a show. And yeah, do let me know if I missed out anything that you feel that is done really well or badly in this series. I hope I've covered everything, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye. Hey guys, it's Editor Kit here. And as I was watching some Moana videos, I realized that I forgot to mention that one thing that I love in Moana too is that they didn't bring in any romance despite the potential of Maui and the artist guy falling in love with her. And another thing I love is that Moana 2 kept Moana's personality consistent. She's still very goofy, she's still a very happy person. And I love the consistency between her personality and the fact that there's no romance in this show. And yeah, it just goes to show that Moana 2 really is an amazing sequel, because in Frozen 2, it was extremely annoying that Kristoff keeps on going after Anna. It kind of ruined the experience of Frozen 2 for me, but then I didn't have that issue in Moana too. And yeah, I just thought that it was something good to mention, because usually in the sequel, like in Mulan 2, it's an exposition, like it expounds more on their romance, their life after their war and stuff like that. But Moana 2 kept all of their themes consistent. She's still a very family loving lady. Nothing has changed. She's still a joker. Her and Maui are forever making fun of each other. They have no feelings for each other, even though Maui's conscience is like, yeah, you need to depend on her. I just love the goofiness and comedic. Like Maui and Moana have been a comedic duo since the first movie, and they are still a comedic duo in the second movie. And I just thought that I want to bring that up.